Hey gang, welcome to Ozone Late Night. This is part 2 of my conversation with Paris Martineau, investigative reporter and feature writer over at The Information. All right, everybody, welcome back. We are here for another episode of Ozone Late Night, and I am rejoined once again by Paris Martineau, the feature writer and investigative. A feature writer, I shouldn't say the as if you're the only one there. That would be, I think, probably incorrect. A feature writer, and I just talked about the importance of words. So let me make sure I'm using words correctly. English, it's a fun thing to try to speak. A feature writer and investigative reporter for The Information. Paris has also worked for The Outline, Wired, New York Magazine, and is on just about every week, except if she's sick or I'm assuming out of town for something, on This Week in Google over at the twit.tv network. Paris, welcome back. I'm sorry that I so badly jumbled that opening compared to the first one.
Listen, words are a mysterious thing.
Boy, are
they're
they.
good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're in the middle. And we're just here to witness them come in and out of our mouths, and I think that's beautiful.
Or be mangled by our mouths in my case. But I wanted to, this is going to be the fun segment. This is just the no more
Now's
doom and
the
gloom.
real after dark.
Pretty much, exactly right. So I have noticed that you're a bit of a Skee-Ball fan. You're part of a Skee-Ball team? Is that correct?
I am part of a Skee-Ball team. It's called the Bourgeois Ski. Right now it's the off season, but we play a recreational league every fall with Volo Sports, which is kind of like a sports app here in the New York City area, where we meet at a bar and ski off against other teams in the New York area, and it's fantastic. I love it.
I love Skee-Ball and pinball are probably my two favorite things, and they're very, very, very analog, which is, I guess sort of an irony for somebody who loves tech and somebody who reports on tech, that these are extraordinarily analog things where the most digital part of most Skee-Ball machines is going to be the score display, honestly. But
absolutely. I mean, there's some, I don't know. How would you explain Skee-Ball?
Skee-Ball is, I've always sort of said it's like miniature bowling with a vertical element. I mean, I don't know how else you can really put it.
Yeah, I guess that is correct. You got to throw your little ball up a inclined ramp into a series of concentric circles that are assigned various point totals. And there's also two very small holes towards the top that are 100 points each that you can try to hit if you're extremely good at Skee-Ball.
Yeah, and Skee-Ball is always the same, right? Because I've never seen a variation on that. It's usually, 3 or 4 center circles and then the 2 hard ones in the upper corners. That's all I've ever seen.
Yep. There's, your 20, 30, 40, 50, and then your 2 100s. And if you miss the 20, which is the biggest one, it goes to just being 10 points.
There's something that's very difficult for anybody who's never played Skee-Ball, because I assume it's everywhere, but it probably isn't, because that's a dumbass assumption. As an American, I make those all the time. But
there's got to be Skee-Ball abroad. If there isn't, we've got a great business idea, Joe.
Okay, my power just went out.
Oh,
hilariously.
Wow.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting that, but I can still do it because I have my laptop and everything. I have everything good, so I can keep going. But yeah, my power.
Oh my
power
gosh! Wow.
Off. Yeah,
a true
crazy.
After dark podcasting experience.
Man, it's a good thing everything connected to this machine is wireless, except for my internet, which is off my phone now. But everything else, my keyboard, everything else is wireless. So I was like, holy shit! But yeah, the monitor just went off, so I had to pop the thing back open. Whoa! I don't think it stopped recording. Really? It didn't stop recording? No, it didn't. I guess because the machine never shut off. Whoa.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, whatever. Okay, so anyway, what I was saying was
is
that
it still raining hard in there?
No, that's the weird part is, I mean, it was raining a little bit,
PG&E.
but anyway, let's not get back into doom and gloom. So what I was explaining is that one of the great parts about Skee-Ball is for me anyway, I'm curious for you, is there's nothing like hearing when you put the quarter in or whatever it is and you hear the balls come down and rack. There's something so satisfying. It's great,
like chunk,
isn't it?
chunk, chunk, chunk. It's a visceral feeling. Anything could happen with those balls. You're like, I don't know what's coming, but it's going to be glorious. A second favorite Skee-Ball experience is I've been playing Skee-Ball with the Bourgeois Ski for like 3 years. I think the team has been going on for 5. We're a famously bad Skee-Ball team. You'd assume after this, I mean, we play maybe like 7 or 8 games total each year. So it's not like we're getting that much practice in. And I guess we could really try a lot to be good at Skee-Ball. But I think it's good to be bad at things. That's something that I take a lot of pride in. I think we all need to be bad at more things. But there's nothing like the experience of, we'll be sitting there with all of our teammates. They're, skiing the ball. You're getting your 40s, you're getting your 50s, some 20s, whatnot. But the thrill of getting a stray 100, the room goes wild. It's unlike anything else.
Well, one of the things that I haven't played Skee-Ball really in a while, but when I used to play a lot, because there used to be a arcade that had 4 of them, I think, really, really close to me when I was younger, and I got really good for a while, and it didn't last long, as with most things, but I had probably about, I want to say, a 2-month stretch where I somehow locked in the muscle memory correctly. Where all I had to do was
is all muscle memory, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
It's really just a rhythm thing. Like, and that was the thing, is I would have to take 1 or 2 shots, and if I could get the 100, I could just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. Like I said, it didn't last long because I think a lot of it was just luck and timing. But that is one of those things where, and I love video games. I play them all the time. I mean, I'm playing with my co-host co-op games almost every night. And we're going to get to Baldur's Gate 3 because, boy, there's a lot to talk about there, but we're not there yet. And but there is something like that, and that's why I think I'm so drawn to pinball and Skee-Ball, is because there is such a specific physical nature to it, and it's not like with video games. You can start to, whether it's through cheat codes or just figuring out some of the mechanics of the game, you can sort of figure out the mechanics and a way to play where you're almost always doing well. But you can't really do that with Skee-Ball. You can't do that with pinball because there is this outside analog physical component where it's random. I mean, it's just, if you hit, it could be something where the day before you played Skee-Ball and then the next day somebody threw the ball and dented the lane, and then you're hitting it when you're trying to, I don't know if they call it bowling. What is the term for when you throw the Skee-Ball? Is it just skiing? What is that term?
I guess I call it skiing the ball.
Okay. Well, whatever it is that happens when you release it, it can that imperfection could skewer the whole thing that you had it down the day before. And I love that element of it, the little randomization of it.
Yeah, it's just you, the Skee-Ball, and your little track, and God knows what could happen between the 3 of you.
And now was that because you were from Florida? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, I grew up in Florida. I hadn't played Skee-Ball, honestly, until I came here to New York. I mean, I'm sure I'd played Skee-Ball. I'm sure I've played Skee-Ball once or twice,
but not a
really
lot. That's what I was
playing
going to ask.
Skee-Ball. Yeah.
Okay.
This was just something I had known. Other people in the media industry had this team, a famously losing Skee-Ball team, for a year or 2, and I saw one time they were looking for recruits, and I was like, "Listen, I'm in, baby. Put me in, coach," and I've been doing it ever since.
Oh, that's really interesting. Because, yeah, I mean, I grew up, I remember it from like county fairs and stuff. There was always, it was like.
It's a big county fair sport, I feel like.
Yeah, that and shooting the water gun into the thing to make the balloon pop. That was always my favorite one.
Oh,
I always liked
fantastic.
That.
No, we should try to find a way to get that in bars, honestly.
There's a place I could walk to it from here that is a bar with axe throwing. And I'm sorry, but I'm never going in there. Because I'm not even going to get
terrible idea.
Right? Doesn't it seem like that is just asking for somebody to end up like a character in The Shining? I don't understand this. What do I know?
I mean, they have to have figured this out, because I assume if it was going to result in injury, it would have happened by now, but I'm with you. Well, I don't think alcohol and axes should mix.
I believe how they do it is, I think they're kind of long wooden stalls where you kind of step into it. And so even if you were to throw it sideways, you're hitting a wall. I'm pretty sure, because I kind of looked in because I was curious, and I think that's how it is. It looks like almost like a long kind of where there's wood paneling and you have to step into the line, almost like a firing, at a firing range where they have the walls.
Yeah.
I've never been to a
It's
firing
like it just
range,
takes one angry drunk to run the other way with the axe, and then we're in a shining situation.
It's not like the alcohol is unknown to cause people to do stupid things, and you got people holding axes. I mean, I don't know, but you're right. I haven't read of some kind of epidemic of it, so I guess it doesn't happen that often, even though it seems like it'd be almost inevitable. But I love Skee-Ball. Skee-Ball and pinball are two of my favorite things. I don't get to play them very often because I don't even know where there's a Skee-Ball thing where I live now, anywhere nearby. But anytime I get to, it's one of those fun things, and pinball's the same way, like a real pinball thing.
Yeah, I adore pinball.
That's great. Pinball's so fun.
It's just also such a tactile thing to do. I love I love how silly pinball machines are.
Oh yeah, there's such an art to pinball machines, which I'm glad now seems to have surged back, where there's now a lot of new pinball machines being designed, and there's a lot of interest in it, which is good because a good pinball machine, it's very, I guess this is like anything else. If you're not into it, it's hard to really explain to somebody why, but there is something really wonderful about there's this total kind of sensory experience when you're playing pinball, because you're watching where that ball is, you're trying to plan things ahead, you're trying to figure out where it's going to go, and you have to, the same way with Skee-Ball, you have to reckon with, if you hit the paddle just wrong, that thing could go it's not going to fly on the table in most cases, but you can only plan it so far, and the rest is kind of reflex and luck, which is great. Randomness is fun.
There's also such an art to designing a pinball machine too. I mean, it is sensory overload, but it is also just chock full of every bit of artistic expression you could imagine. They have weird little graphics going on screen, 75 different little vehicles or something strapped in there. Anything you could think of could be in that pinball machine, and I love that.
Oh yeah, the only bad thing about pinball is it's very expensive to actually own a pinball machine, because man, they're not cheap, and I don't know where the hell I could ever put it, but I would probably live on that thing, because it's pinball's fun stuff. But let's talk about, I know, for a while there you couldn't, this is a topic I don't mind going back to, even though you couldn't escape it for a while, but let's talk about Baldur's Gate 3, because that's a fantastic game, and I
think it's the best game I've played since that I can remember. I mean, I think it's tied with Disco Elysium for me.
I haven't played Disco Elysium. I keep reading how great it is, and it's a game that I should have played by now, but I just haven't.
It's a game that's definitely also a book if you're into that, but it's very different than Baldur's Gate 3. But I think rivals Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of the emotional depth of its storytelling, in a way that I was very surprised that Baldur's Gate 3, given the scope of it, both from a like battle tactics and encounter design mode, I was surprised that they also had that level of attention to detail with the story and voice acting.
Well, so were you a Dungeons and Dragons kid? Is that how you got? Because I am not a sword and sorcery anything. Baldur's Gate 3 was a very strange game for me to even play. But was that something that you were into when you were younger?
I was not a Dungeons and Dragons kid. I became into Dungeons and Dragons in the last couple of years, I guess, through there's been a resurgence in D&D related stuff. I specifically found out through former College Humor cast members, people in like the improv community have started doing a lot of actual play D&D, like using D&D as a medium for like long form improvised narrative storytelling. For instance, I really like the podcast Not Another D&D Podcast, as well as a show called Dimension 20 on this network called Dropout. I've talked about on This Week in Google quite a bit. But kind of through there, I've learned about D&D and have since played it a lot. I feel like here in Brooklyn, people are very into Dungeons & Dragons recreationally.
Well, I mean, it does make it. One of the reasons I never got into it was that I'm not any type of writer, and there was, because people were always, you should create a campaign because I could draw. And I'm like, well, it's not the same thing. I mean, I could draw you
very
a dragon,
different, in fact.
Yeah, I can't tell you a backstory as to why the dragon wants, to conquer the 3 kingdoms, and for some reason has to burn up the night guard. I can't do any of that stuff. But it somehow just sort of missed me. And Baldur's Gate, I haven't played any of the previous games. I'd heard the name, but the only reason I even played it was because because I'm more of a sci-fi, like that, the hard sci-fi type of stuff. That's more of my interest. And my co-host and I had played through a game called Wasteland 3. And we really were impressed with that. And this is a recommendation for everybody. If you like Baldur's Gate 3 and you can tolerate sci-fi, because I know some people are fantasy or sci-fi and some people are both, so that's fine. But if you really enjoyed that type of storytelling, Wasteland 3 is one you should play, and it is fully playable in co-op. So you can play it yourself, and you can manage it just like Baldur's Gate. But Wasteland 3 is basically sort of Fallout or Mad Max, but it has that same thing where there were decisions where there were no exaggeration. We would stop playing and discuss what the morality of the next decision was going to be, because the game doesn't always give you easy choices. Just like Baldur's Gate, where you have to sit there and go, well, what is this actually going to lead to? Yeah, it was really wild, because as an example, and this isn't really much of a spoiler because this is one of the first things you do in Wasteland 3, but this is why Baldur's Gate 3 interested me at all. Is there's a part where there's this young woman who's with you, and her family's been kidnapped, and she doesn't know what happened to them, and you end up finding they're all dead, and then she finds out that her boyfriend got them killed because he made a deal with these raiders, because they swore that they would leave her and him alone, otherwise they were going to kill both of them. And so he made this deal, and she's like, I'm going to kill you now. And then you as the player have the option to either let her kill him, or to do it for her, or to arrest him. And we were sitting there going back and forth, and we're like, okay, well, wait, what is, and because the game does kind of let you know that there is impact from your decisions. Because some games, they play at that, but there's actually no impact. The story's the same no matter what.
Yeah.
But this is not, Wasteland 3 is not like that. You actually could just lose this character in 5 minutes if you do the wrong thing. She'll just leave, or get killed.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you decide?
The first time we played it, because we've played through it in its entirety twice now, the first time we let her do it. I think I was the one who made the decision. We recorded it, so if you want to see it, it's on YouTube somewhere on our channel. But I think I was the one who was like, okay, she got their family killed. We're going to let her kill them. And then it fucking wrecked her for a while. She actually struggled with it and had PTSD and all this stuff. And that's why the second time we were like, no, we're not going to make this woman go through this again. We have to do something different, because we didn't want to see the character suffer. This is a digital character we don't know. And I'm like, we can't do this to her again, man. We saw what it did the first time.
We can't do it to her again.
Yeah. Cause to me, I'm like, well, I would want to wipe him out. But of course there isn't, this is a classic struggle of, vengeance versus revenge and justice and all that stuff. And so it didn't even occur to me that she might have a problem with it. I was like, well, she wants to kill him. We got to let her kill him. We can't do it for her. Let her kill him. And then, yeah, she was a mess and going back and forth. And did I do the wrong thing? And I'm like, oh my God, we fucking destroyed this woman. We can't. Yeah. So it was the second
time. Gotta save her from her fate.
Yeah. We arrested her, and we managed to kind of convince her that it was, let him rot in jail. It's, let him have to actually think about what he did and all that stuff. And she was better off, I think, in that run. She wasn't as psychologically gibbering and looking into the corner as much. So then I had read that Baldur's Gate.
Were there any decisions like that in Baldur's Gate that struck you?
Oh boy, there were a bunch. What was the one? There was I'm trying to remember now. There was one where it was, I think there was that little the spirit demon kid in the woods. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, because there were multiple ones where I was really indecisive on a lot of stuff. And then there were other times where I was like, no, you know what? God, I'm struggling to think. Oh, the Asterion thing. The Asterion thing with, what was his boss's name? Cazador or something like that?
Cazador, yeah.
Yeah, because once he explains it, and sorry if this is a spoiler for Baldur's Gate 3, but it's been out for a while, everybody, so you should have played it. So you find out that Cazador isn't exactly the way he's been portrayed. And so I think there's a thing where you can let Asterion talk to him or kill him or whatever. And I think I was the one who was like, no, fuck this guy. And we wiped him out. And then Asterion was really pissed about it. And I was like, hey man, you've spent this whole journey saying how much this guy abused you and whatever. And now you're telling me that we took your decision away. I was trying to help you, man. I fucking wiped him off the map. And there was a couple of instances like that where I was just like,
did he leave your party?
People. No, he stayed. I thought he would. There was a couple of things where there was something else where the only one we lost Shadowheart bailed. And man, I fucking hated Shadowheart. So I was like, good.
Wait, did Shadowheart bail when did you try and convince her not to kill the Night Song, and did you fuck it up?
No, we saved the Night Song. We loved the Night Song. She was fucking awesome.
Night Song, the coolest moment in the game.
I thought she was going to die at one point. Because she kept talking about like, oh, I don't feel well or something. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, oh no, she's going to die. This is the setup. She's going to like, something's going to happen. Which I was actually like, oh fuck, this sucks. But no, why did she bail? Because I thought Lae'zel would bail. Because I didn't like Lae'zel at first, and then she started to grow on me. Because I'm like, okay, this woman is fucking savage, and I can respect this. This is a New York type of woman, so I'm okay with this now. Because at first,
I love how she says in some of her dialogue lines, actually, I'm known as the funniest of all the Gith. I'm like, you go, Lae'zel.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm monopolizing this whole thing, but yeah, I don't remember why Shadowheart left. But so did anybody leave from when you played? Or how many times have you played through it? We only played through it, I think, once.
I've played through it twice. One a normal run, one a Dark Urge run. Both times, no one left my party. Who did you romance? Both times I was like, I'm gonna do something different in this run, and then both times I played a sorcerer and romanced a Starian.
Okay, so this is what becomes funny about this, and this is also on our YouTube page because there are multiple funny things around this, because my co-host and I are extraordinarily different people in regards to our romantic past and other things like that. So we ended up inverting how we actually were in real life, and there's something. He always likes to play as a woman because, in his words, he'd rather look at a digital woman's behind than his own. And I understand that. That's fine.
Very classic gamer move, yes.
Sure. As opposed to me, where I don't mind playing as a woman if there is a tactical reason for it. Like if she's because I always want to be the sharpshooter. I always want to be the sniper, whatever. So if the woman is the best sniper, I'm playing the woman, whatever, because that's the skill I need, and I don't care what body it's in. But in this case, I made myself into a, because the ranged character was a wood elf ranger. So even that was based on, okay, what stats, what character are best for me to do from range? Because I'm not a tank. So I'm like, okay, so wood elf, fine. So I'm going to look like Elrond, or what was Orlando Bloom's character's name? What was that character's name? Legolas.
Oh,
I was going to be Legolas.
Legolas, yeah.
So I'm like, all right, fine. I look like Legolas, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't look anything like me, but at least I have, a really great hairline and I've got a beautiful skin. So whatever, fine, great. So with the romance stuff, for some reason, I ended up being the gay polyamorous like sex lord. And
you got a Halcyon and who else? Gale?
Well, it never ended up. Okay, so where I ended up was with Will. Once I realized Will was a warlock, I was like, oh no, I'm team Will.
I fucking forgot Will even existed. I'm sorry, Will.
No, but this is what was funny about it. And meanwhile, my co-host, he fell in love with Karlach, and he was like, nope, dedicated, monogamous lesbian thing with Karlach, and we're sticking with it. And I'm like, good, go for it. And never even really veered off of that. And I was like, I will sleep with anybody, anywhere, as long as they treat me well. I don't care. What's the difference? I'm a wood elf.
Why not?
Fuck it.
You're a wood elf. You're Legolas.
Right. But what was funny about it is there were points where, because I think I betted the Guardian.
Oh, yeah. Gotta do that.
Sure.
Simply must.
Yeah. And then somebody else. And every time my co-host is like, oh, no, you're going to lose Will. And I'm like, wait a minute. Will and I have not had a conversation where we have mentioned monogamy nor any type of commitment of any kind. Therefore, until he reacts badly, I don't know that he has any objection. He doesn't want to join in, but that's something different. Like, I got really nuanced as far as the psychology of it. I'm like, if he's not saying this bothers me or no, then I have no issue with it. And he never did. He stuck with me the whole time. So it worked out fine.
It's interesting. There are certain characters, I've gone so deep into this, there are certain characters that do mind and certain that don't. Shadowheart, very open to any sort of poly thing. I think Karlach might be a bit more leaning towards monogamous. I'm not sure about Gale. Astarion, very gets very uncomfortable if you have sex with other people as well.
Really?
But that's more of a past thing. It's really interesting.
That's interesting. Well, I guess because of his past, that does make sense. Because Astarion seemed like the most kind of free love. Not maybe the most,
but I mean, there comes
a
point in the Astarion romance where he's like, actually, I'd prefer if we could not have sex for a while because I have spent the past 200 years being a sex slave and it feels weird to be in my own body. So you're like, oh yeah, totally fine.
Yeah,
we could just chill out for a bit. And then if you try to sleep with other people, he has this really sad dialogue where he's like, oh, is it because you're not getting your needs met with me, that's totally fine. And then looks like he's been traumatized again. And so you're like, reload. I'm sorry. I can't traumatize my elven vampire boyfriend again.
Yeah, see, I do want to get, because I know people rave about Asterion, and his voice performance was excellent. I mean, it was just
phenomenal. It's also, I think, just one of the best written. I mean, if you ever do a second run, I would recommend doing a Dark Urge run and with Romancing Astarion, because one, both of those paths are well written, but two, the writers for Astarion, like the lead writer for Astarion's character, and the lead writer for the Dark Urge character path, briefly had to like switch roles or something, or the Dark Urge person had to do both for a bit.
Really?
So they have a lot more character interaction and a lot more like deep narrative intertwining than other roles in the game.
Interesting. Yeah, probably our third run will be a Dark Urge, because Dark Urge is like an evil one, right? That's like an evil run, isn't it?
No, not really, actually. It can be
school
evil.
Me on this, because I wasn't clear.
Dark Urge, do you know anything about it?
Not well. I read a little bit about it, but I didn't really understand what it was. So that's the thing, is I guess I don't.
Basically, the pitch for Dark Urge is it's the exact same. You can play as like the pre-made character, which is a white dragonborn, or you can play as whatever character you want, be it your Legolas wood elf or a random girl drow or whatever. But your background is that, you start off same beginning as any other character in Baldur's Gate 3, but you have like kind of weird thoughts whenever you see blood. You go to sleep that first night and all you can think of is like blood, death, blood. But you can't really remember why. You don't really remember anything from before you were on the ship. And so it's kind of a slow roll in the first like act or two of like, what's going on? Why do I have all these urges? You see, this happens in the first like 15 minutes of the game, so I don't think it's a spoiler, but the part where Gale's hand is sticking out of the portal, and you're supposed to grab him and pull him out.
Yeah.
You get a dialogue option that's like, think about chopping his hand off, or things like that.
Really?
All these kind of strange little things. And I'm not going to spoil where it takes you, but there are two kind of paths you can take from it, and it is either embrace the urge or resist the urge. And frankly, the more narratively interesting and satisfying one is resist the urge. But it's like a whole kind of subplot that goes along with the rest of the game and really ties in. It makes sense that you are the main character in Baldur's Gate 3 with everything that goes on with the Dark Urge background character. And so you are trying to kind of resist this urge and figure out what it is within the context of the broader story of Baldur's Gate 3. And it really ties in with everything.
So it doesn't require you to be evil. It's just another aspect of choice consideration.
Correct. Yeah. You can, a lot of people do it as an evil run, but I frankly think it ends up being a lot less satisfying.
Well, see, and that's, I think, what I was reading, and I think that's why I defaulted to, you have to play evil. I think that's why I was thinking that, because a lot of people were kind of describing it in a, I get to play as the bad guy type of way. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't want to be a scumbag.
There is exactly one evil thing that you have to do that you can't get out of in the Dark Urge run, but I think it's more of like scene setting, and it really makes you immediately feel the weight of what your urge is. I would recommend doing it, but don't look anything up about it, because I had that spoiled for me. Okay,
that's you bringing that up is interesting, because my co-host and I had completely different outlooks on this. Because he's like, I don't know, I got to look up what this decision means, and I'm like, I'm not looking up shit. I want to I make a decision, and I have to live with it. Otherwise, and he finally stopped doing that, because I'm like, don't tell me. I'm like, I don't want to know. I don't care. The whole point of this is there's going to be decisions that bite you in the ass. If I know all the right decisions, why am I playing this? I want to understand whether I agree with what happened or not, because, and this is a great example. I know we recorded this because he lost his mind, and his wife was in the room when this happened. And my wife laughed at it, which is great. So there's a part very early on when you remember when you go to rescue Halsin? He's trapped in that ogre fortress or whatever, or orc fortress. So there's a part where you come into the room and there's kids that are like poking him as the bear. Yeah. Right? And my co-host is like, because at that point, I don't think we'd been detected. We'd stealthed into it, and we got into that room. And my co-host knows my feelings on animals and mistreating animals and everything. And he's like, because he sees him poking the bear. And he's like, all right.
Literally poking the bear.
Literally poking the bear. Because Halsin is a druid, for those who haven't played, who can metamorphose into different things. So the infamous bear sex scene, if you've seen that meme, that's where it comes from. But so his thought was, okay, I don't know, because I think there was 2 regular guards in the room and then the 3 kids. I think it was 3 kids. And he's like, well,
Yes.
all right, we have to plan this because can we kill the guards and knock the kids out? He was trying to figure out if we had enough leveled up enough at that point to be able to survive this battle. Because we'd gotten walloped a couple of times. I mean, we wiped multiple times early on because we just we've never played games with these types of systems. So I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, neither did he really.
It's also, I think Baldur's Gate 3 is one of those games where, especially in Act 1, which this happens, you have a kind of artificial time crunch on you to where it seems like you can't take long rests where all of your spell slots and stuff restock, but you absolutely can.
Right. And so I had said, you have to be careful because you consume resources for a long rest. And so we can't, just blow everything on the first fight. And so he was calculating all this stuff about, okay, do we have enough? And my first comment was, well, the kids are going to be easy to kill, so we wipe them out first. And he has kids, and I don't. And he was like, holy shit, that's the darkest thing you've ever seen. He turns to his wife, he's like, you got to hear what Joe just said. And I'm like, fuck that, man. They're fucking with the bear. They're dead. We're going to wipe this room out, and I don't give a shit. And we did. We killed them all, and I didn't give a fuck. I'm like, this is the scenario. This is where my character is.
I did the same thing first time. And then the second time I was like, okay, I'm going to try and knock the kids out. Knocked one of them out. And then one of my companions just runs over and fucking kills the kid immediately as soon as it's knocked out. It's like, all right.
I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of time. I mean, obviously they had bad parents who didn't teach them that you shouldn't torture living beings. And so that's their problem, but whatever, done, sorry. And, but yeah, that was because you said decisions that you went back and forth on. That one was easy for me. The one thing is, did you trust the Guardian or were you suspicious all along? Because I never fucking trusted that guy. Never.
I weirdly, from the get-go, was like, I feel like I trust him. Even though I was like, I know I shouldn't. I know he's going to fuck me somehow. But I was like, I trust him for some reason. And I feel like I'm perfectly in the middle between you and your co-host because I think my first time playing it through, I felt the compulsion to look up every single choice and look up whether or not there are consequences for eating all the worms and whatnot. And I wish I didn't because looking back now, I'm like, that was a terrible idea. I just want to go in blind. And I did with my second run and things like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Did you play it solo or did you play it with anybody else? Or was it just
I played solo both times.
Yeah,
I trusted the Guardian. I honestly kind of hate the Orpheus. I think listen, I know objectively he's in the right. He was a prisoner in that prism for how many thousands of years, just had to watch this guy suck off his life force and magic. But I don't know. I kind of like the Emperor. He seemed nice, even though I know he isn't. He's just manipulated me effectively.
The problem for me with him was he kept saying, hey, you want to transform? Hey, you want to transform? Want to transform? Eat the worms, transform. And I'm like, okay, this dude is coming on really strong. And I'm not digging it,
absolutely. Especially the thing where he gives you the super worm and he's like, please embrace your power. And if you're like, no, and you fail the check, he's like, no, actually embrace your power and makes you eat it. Hate that.
Yeah, and then when you basically, I think it's when you refuse. Sorry, we're spoiling. Whatever, I don't care. There's the point where there's a point where he finally turns his back on you, and I'm like, good. I wanted to fucking kill you for the last 5 hours anyway, so I'm glad you turned on me, and now I don't feel bad at all. And I'm like, fucking drop the hammer on this piece of shit. And then I was so happy when he turned. I was like, that's great, because I don't like this fucking guy, and I don't have to pretend anymore. And yeah, we slept together, but you know what? Everybody makes a mistake, so fuck you, and we're gonna kill you. And it was. That was probably one of the happiest moments in the game is when that piece of shit turned on us because I'm like, good, because I was right. And once in a while I can judge somebody correctly based on their actions. So yeah, Orpheus
and
was
then you can
just
too. One-shot him when he's with the Elder Brain. What did you think of the Raphael fight? I think we talked about this a little bit in the Discord, but not really.
That was probably the hardest and best fight in the whole thing, I would say.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the best fights I've ever done in a video game. It just felt so challenging. The music was incredible when he started singing. Absolute chills. It was just such a good dungeon too. Every room was so interesting. The room with Harlep, the succubus, phenomenal.
Yeah, what was the name of the character that is trapped there? Is she
Hope?
Hope, that's it. I was going to say it's not Angel, but it's something kind of on the nose like that. That's right, it was Hope. Because I think you can choose not to help her, I think. But
Yeah.
because my co-host was like, shit, man, we're in his like domain now. I don't know if we can get out. So maybe we shouldn't piss him off. And I'm like, we're not leaving her. I'm like, she's been stuck here. She's coming out one way or another. If she dies in the attempt, that's one thing, but I'm not going to just turn my back on this woman because it might piss this piece of shit off. I'm like, no, we're going to fucking war. We're in here. And that, like, that's where he like is trying to analyze sometimes he's analytical about stuff to a fault. And I'm like, no, like there's right and there's wrong. This woman has been trapped here for I don't even know, thousands of years, millennia, whatever it is. I'm like, she's asking us to get her out. Would you want somebody to turn their back on your daughter? I don't think so. We're getting her out. And if Raphael comes for us, then I guess that's the fucking way it's got to be. But that fight was, I think we wiped out on that fight 4 times before we really came up with a good strategy because, man, if you don't play that fight correctly.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I cheesed that fight a bit by looking it up in advance and just cast, I think, what was it? Vicious Mockery or one of those. This was before they had patched it to where it made his wisdom higher, but there was a time early on when I was playing it that I noticed looking at his stats that he had like really low wisdom, so I ended up using kind of a wisdom based spell that essentially like locked him in it's Tasha's Hideous Laughter, locked him in just laughing every time for his turn so that I could just wail on him with my party while we fended off the rest of his fiends.
So did you play a pre-built or did you make a character?
I made a character.
What was
I think
your
my
class?
first
Like,
was
what'd you play
a
as?
draconic high elf sorcerer. Let's see. Yeah, it was kind of a fire-based build. I really just love meta magic and area of effect spells. And then my kind of main party was Astarion as I had such a sick build for Astarion as a ranger appreciator. You'll probably appreciate this. It was a combination of assassin, rogue, gloomstalker, ranger, and a couple of levels of fighter, so that I could essentially do like 300 damage in like my opening round by being able to, because with the gloomstalker ranger you get an extra attack,
which is what I was.
First.
I ran as a pure ranger, so yeah.
You get an extra attack your first round, as well as, I believe, like extra damage on your first round on any enemy that hasn't already gone yet. With Assassin Rogue, I believe you also get some extra dice if you have advantage already, which you're getting during that first round. Then if you have Fighter, you can action search to go again. So I was getting like something like 5 attacks in my first turn of combat with my busted Astarion build. It was beautiful. My other ones were pretty normal. I had like Barbarian Karlach, and I think probably Shadowheart or something as a life domain cleric.
Yeah, it's interesting because I went back and forth on whether I was going to be a wizard or as far as my secondary, because I was like, okay, it's going to either be Gale or Will. And really what it came down to as far as the whoever my secondary would be, because basically when you're playing co-op, you each get a second character who's either romance or not. And my co-host, he went with Karlach instantly. We made her into a war druid, I want to say, or something like that. She was fucking great. Ooh. I mean, because I did look up that build, because I'm like, I don't know how to build these characters. I know nothing about D&D, so I don't know the class system well. So I said, let me just look up the best way to do this. And Karlach was a fucking like ass hammer. Like she would just destroy and then heal and destroy. It was great. He ran fantastic. She was great. The two of them, they really were like the best couple, because like he was just a death dealer up close. He would just run in and just start laying waste to everything, and then she would heal him and then back him up. So they were a perfect couple. They were lovely. And then it was me and Will, and I honestly, me and Will were fantastic because we were both ranged, and Warlock was just a cooler class to me. I'm like, okay, wizards, they're kind of Swiss Army knives. Like they get more spells, they can do more stuff, but they can't dial in. They can't get to a point where they unleash something that is so harsh. It's like the fucking wrath of God ripping your eye sockets out. they just kind of are broad stroke stuff. And I'm like, so Gale, great hair, and I love this voice acting. That was all fine, and I liked helping him out, but I'm like, nah, you're not it for me. Whereas Will was like, I'm the fucking blade of the coast, and I'm the sword of justice. And I'm like, all right, I enjoy people with hardcore morality. Get on my team. And then he and I were basically, we were the range couple, because I'd be firing bows, and then he'd do his Eldritch Blast.
Oh yeah, Warlocks make those Eldritch Blasts go. I mean, I think it's also something that is hard to pick up on when Baldur's Gate is like your first intro to D&D, is like there's this concept. I think it's like the TV tropes version of it is linear wizards linear warriors quadratic wizards, which like in early game levels, warriors or warlocks and things like that are by far the better choice. Wizards are weak as hell, but as you get to a higher level, and I think Baldur's Gate taps out at like level 12 or 11 or something like that, 12, wizards become war gods. Wizards become like, you could just have a 6th level fireball and just flatten the entire battlefield. But it's very difficult to, I think, make that known to newer players, because you get used to who you're playing with. And same with, I think, something that's, what difficulty level did you guys play on?
As far as the game's difficulty, I think just whatever standard or normal is. We just went with normal.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, on like easy difficulty, they forbid you from multi-classing even. And I think they should probably do that in normal as well, because it's so hard to build a good character in D&D with multi-classing unless you kind of like know what you're doing. It's easy, or I guess it's not hard to build a good character, but it's easy to fuck up your character permanently by multi-classing in a really dumb way. And I think that it's like really hard to explain that in the context of a game like Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, I did. That was one thing I looked up, because I knew there was something called multi-classing, but I looked up, okay, if you're new to this, should you do it? And they were like, no. They said, if you don't know what you're doing, you're better off just sticking with a pure class, go through it. And probably I won't even mess with that on the second run, because I think on the second run,
I think that's smart.
I want to do like Asterion Gale. I want to make that the power couple, and I want to run them. Just because I think they're both interesting, and I want to see where they go. Then
also make your Astarion build a ranger, a Gloomstalker ranger assassin. It's one of the most fun builds in the world.
Well, one thing I did do with him was I made him into the ultimate thief of all time at one point. And at one point I got really, because my co-host, he was like, oh, I'm not going to be on for like an hour. And I'm like, oh, well, let me try out this thieving thing, because, I kind of did it with the elf. He was good at it. He had like the dexterity was high enough, so I could kind of pull it off. But then I had read, well, if you really want to be stealing stuff, then put this armor on Asterion. He's basically fucking invisible. I'm like, oh, okay, well, he's probably not that powerful, but let me just play around with him. And so I went in there and I just separated the whole party out, and I just took Asterion. I'm like, and I'm walking around. I'm like, oh, let me see if I can steal from this person. Knew nothing. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I ended up robbing the fucking entire town of everything. Allies, enemies, children, dragons, everything I could see. I was sneaking up behind them, getting down on the ground, doing an invisibility potion, stealing all their invisibility potions, all their shit, go to the next person, invisibility. And he came into the thing, and I'm like, hey, buddy, would you like the best armor in the game? Because I stole it off that vendor. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I've been robbing people for 45 fucking minutes. And I was like, I am the criminal. I am the kingpin of Baldur's Gate now. Like, my poster should be everywhere. So I said, I don't know if I should even play this character anymore, because at one point, this was the funniest fucking thing in the whole game. At one point, I robbed like 7 people in a row. Every vendor within the town square, everybody, there was somebody, everybody. And so I'm walking along like, like no big deal. And I see all these guards run by me. And they're like, we know the thief is still somewhere over here. And they all ran right past. And I'm like, fuck. And I just traveled right back to the camp. And I'm like, Asterion, go to sleep for a week, because you can't be seen anymore.
You got to lay low, buddy.
Oh,
Cazador's after you.
Man, that was a fucking riot doing that, because I was so careful with my normal character, because, if you get caught, then you can lose, they could go to war on you and everything else. So I was really careful. But Asterion was a ghost.
Jail, a whole thing. Yeah. I mean, he's not coming out for anything.
Oh man, he was
It's just,
great.
it's such an interesting game because there are so many different little wormholes like that you can fall down into.
What was something difficult do you remember something where you were like, man, I don't know what to do here, like a really difficult thing?
I think I struggled a lot with what to do about the tadpoles, whether or not to consume them at first. I was like, there's gotta be some terrible consequence for just popping these tadpoles like candy, right? And I mean, turns out there isn't, which is kind of interesting. And certainly in my second run, I was like, absolutely gonna do that again and again. Honestly, I think my biggest like holy shit moments in the game were in the Dark Urge run, because there are a lot of like fucked up choices you have to make. Not fucked up, but just like very difficult, intense roles. I think similarly, that whole interaction between the main character and Shadowheart at the Night Song, where you have to either convince her to spare the Night Song or step back and like trust her, was just some of the most compelling storytelling possible, you know? I mean, the thrill of trying to convince her to not do that and then be successful is fantastic. And it's also things like, it's one of those games where you can just have the silliest little idea and then see it through and it works. Like in preparation for finding the Night Song, you're dealing with I'm forgetting what the name of that disgusting guy is who's down there. He's like the right hand to Ketherick Thorm. He's the zombie necromancer, but you end up seeing him a lot in the lead up to that fight, and you're clearly like being sent on a fetch quest. And I was like,
was that Bartholomew? Is that guy?
Bartholomew or
yeah.
whatever his name is. Like I was like, oh, if I don't, there's a point where you finally meet up with him, and he's like, oh, you got to go kill the Night Song or whatever. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And also, I don't want you just to kind of ambush me or whatever. And so I sat there thinking for a bit, and I was like, all right, I'll take your special bell to call your brother. And I was like, but what if I just put all of my people in position around this room and fucking kill you right here? And it was a hard fight. Wasn't supposed to happen in that room, but I did it. And I've since learned that I missed out on an entire really difficult fight that was supposed to happen where the Night Song actually is. Like, I never have fought that dude where he's supposed to be, because I always take him out right then and there, because I'm like, why wouldn't I do this here? He's in just a room.
Let me tell you about the actual fight you missed, because this is one of the things that my co-host, because I'm not going to say I didn't read anything. I had read this one thing that said, oh, shove people. It works. And I went, huh, okay, well, I mean, I don't think they'd lie, because I saw it in a couple places. Just try shoving them as like a hashtag at one point for a while. I'm like, all right. And so there was an early fight where we're in there, and it was a brutal fight. I don't remember, some demon guy, a tiefling, I think, or something, whatever, who was sitting on a throne, and there's this whole room full of people. And it's inside that orc fortress before we reached Halcyon. And it was a miserable fight. Yeah. You know,
that one sucks. One. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were fucking ragged after that. But we had done it, and we got through it, and we managed to beat everybody. And I'm like, okay, I don't remember what's the right way, because there were still enemies in there. I'm like, we need to get out of here, because if they catch us now, we'll have spent 3 hours killing this guy, and now we're going to get killed by one random asshole who trips over a keg and manages to plunge a dagger into our necks. We have to leave. And so we're trying to find our way out. We walk into this room, and there's some enemy in there that's not a boss enemy, but she's high level. And I'm like, fuck. That's it. We're done. And then I'm like, and my co-host, his name's Lando. He's up there. I'm like, Lando, fucking shove her. And he's like, what? He's like, no, I have to attack. I'm like, just fucking shove her, because she was next to a chasm. And he's like, that's not going to work. I'm like, and he shoves her and she dies. He's like, holy shit. And I'm like, I told you, fucking shove her, man. We got to shove people. And so that was the first kind of instance. But I think even at that point, he didn't really believe it could work on a big scale. And so blah, 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 we're going through, and we get to the fight you're talking about, the big fight against Bart where the Night Song is. And he wipes us out 3 times. Like, I mean, just fucking annihilates us. But we're over another chasm, and I look at it, and I'm like,
it's just so many chasms. Chasm City.
Yes. Yeah. Which, amazingly, I think we only actually got shoved once into one. Nobody ever shoved us. So I don't know if we just positioned well accidentally or whatever, but we never really got shoved. So he's like, okay, because when we get into hard fights, we'll sit there and try to strategize it, because, you know, we don't know what to do really. And we never really looked up a strategy guide for some reason. That's the point where you would think, okay, look it up. But we never really did. Mostly because I think we stumbled into success more often than not. But there's a point where I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm like, stay near the edge of the platform and I will telekinetically shove him to where you are, and then you push him. Because I knew I couldn't, where he started, there was no way to shove him from there. So you had to move him back. You had to back him off. And Lano's like, well, but he's floating. And I'm like, he's floating, but he's not flying. He's just floating. So I don't know if his power extends to an infinite
difference.
Well, I thought so, but he was convinced, no, he's going to just float back in. And I'm like, well, whatever, man. Then we'll die in 5 minutes, like instead of 2 hours. Who cares? So sure enough, I shove him back and I'm like, shove him. And he's like, well, I can cast it. I'm like, fuck it, shove him. And he does, and he dies. And I was like, and he screams so loudly on the mic, it blows the mic out. Because he's like, ah! And I'm like, I told you, fucking shove him, man. Why not? What's the problem?
Shove him.
I mean, that became like my thing for every fight. If I thought there was a hole nearby, I'm like, just fucking shove him, whatever.
Same with whatever it is, the fight against Orin, where she has all those dudes around her in the blood ball pit who can't be attacked, and every single turn they just make her stronger. I realized I had a bunch of those thunder arrows that if you shot them near someone, it'd push everyone back 15 feet, and they were all on the edge. So I was like, all right, baby, it's time to shoot all of my arrows at once. And by God, did it work.
I secretly was hoping we might be able to convert Orin. I dug her right from the beginning. I'm like, oh, this is the bad girl of the game.
Well.
Yeah, I was like, I would like
oh,
this
man,
person
you're
back in my
going to
camp.
love the Dark Urge run. The Dark Urge run is along the lines of convert Orin, but that you don't convert Orin.
Well, that's a shame. I mean, I wish, but yeah. I mean,
Listen, there's always a DLC. I love her armor. I love her voice acting. That one scene where she's with Gortash and she like stabs that painting. Love that.
Yeah, that was actually. Oh, there's that. I think about it. That was actually the toughest. That was the toughest decision I think that we had to make. Was where. What was the guy's name that was with her? Mr. Fancy Pants. What was his name?
Gortash.
Gortash, that's it. He's got that throne room, right?
Oh, the Iron Throne.
Yeah, you go in there, and I think what most people, and I don't know if this is what you did, most people basically, I guess, go along with him to spare Will's father, so that because Will's father's in his thrall or whatever. And I said, no, we're going to just kill him. And Lano's like, might be a bad idea. And I'm like, I don't care. This guy's a prick and I don't like him and the town hates him and they're all brainwashed that he's some kind of, super god or whatever. And he's got to be put down. So we're putting him down and we walloped him and Will's father got killed. And I thought Will was going to leave me at that point. And that was the one time where I'm like, oh man, we might have to reload a save. Because I didn't want to kill
That's
Will's
what I did
father.
my first time. So I was like, I didn't mean to kill Will's father, but also we can't be partnering with Gortash over all things.
That's what I said.
Have you ever heard of the underwater prison?
We went to the underwater prison. Yeah, we were in there. We got stuck in there.
So you got Will's father.
Yeah, so we got him out, and then he was controlled or something in that fight. Will's father got killed in the hall.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. And then basically, but in our game he got resurrected. So it was, but Will basically, man, I thought that was it, and he, I guess, forgave me or whatever. Probably because I backed him on a lot of stuff. But
similarly, I think one of the hardest decisions I made is that decision where Mizora is like, "What do you want to do, Will? Do you want to save your father and thus sign your soul over to hell forever, or free yourself from this contract and doom your father to death?" Which one did you decide?
Okay. That one, my Lando talked me into the sign the contract, save the father. I was against it because he said, well, what do you think Will would want to do? And I said, look, I was thinking about it from the father's perspective. I said, if I got brought back and I found out my son was doomed, plus he had not approved of Will, like he
signing his soul to begin with.
Yeah, right. So I was like, the father hasn't exactly loved this whole arrangement from the beginning. If you bring him back and now you're eternally stuck, he might just turn his back on you entirely. And Lando said, yeah, but what would you do as his son? And I'm like, okay, yeah, if it was me, I'd want my father back. Yes, of course. Because, yes, because my father was, I didn't have a miserable childhood. So of course I want my father back. So I'm like, all right, fine. But I was sure, I was like, there's going to be a fucking catch to this. This fucking demon, I'm trying to say devil and demon at once. This woman is going to screw us somehow. I was sure of it. I was sure the father would come back and his neck would be broken or he'd be like in miserable pain or something. I'm like, there's no way this is on the level. But I guess within the rules of D&D, this is on the level because it's a contract. So I guess, he comes back and he forgives Will. And I'm like, okay, you made the right call. Because I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And he's like, you should. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And so it worked out better. But that's what we ended up doing for the first run.
Yeah, my first run, I chose to break Will's contract, but then I was like, fuck it, we're going to save him anyway. And then you try to burst him out of the Iron Throne, but Missoura then tries to fuck you guys over when you're trying to get him out.
See, I knew
that's
it.
like a different thing.
I knew it.
Oh, you're totally right.
Yeah, I'm like, you can't trust demons.
Definitely not.
So, but I was surprised that there was no catch. I mean, obviously she had Will, so I guess she didn't need a catch. But I was sure even no matter what we did, I was like, there's something, because you didn't have Karlak as a romance option, right? No. Okay, so there was a bit with that where I think he had to make some kind of decision, and he was like, well, And with the Gortash thing, this is my general approach to these types of decisions. Because when he had said, well, let's just pretend we're with Gortash, and I'm like, okay, what happens if we kneel before this asshole and he uses that as an excuse to murder half the town because now he's got us? Are you going to be fine with that? Because I'm not. I'm like, you can't bow to these people because you don't know what they're going to do.
You can't negotiate with terrorists.
That's fucking right. And that was my thing with Missoura too. I'm like, you can't grant these people anything because these people are, the game is telegraphing them as evil with a capital E. I'm like, you can't fucking go along with this stuff because what happens if the worst outcome comes around from your decision? Now you're stuck with that. And my whole thing is, no, fuck it. We die. That's fine. That's how it's got to be. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this guy who's clearly getting ready to murder a bunch of people is somehow okay because it might give me the upper hand in a battle. Fuck you. No, it ain't happening. So that was my morality of the whole first run. And it probably will be forever. It's just how I approach these games. I can't alter that part about myself, so I don't ever do evil runs of stuff. I'm like, I don't want to hurt people. There's no fun in this.
I think that's the right move, especially because Baldur's Gate 3, from what I've read, I don't have the stomach to do an evil run, and I won't ever do it. They really make it hurt. They really show you the harm that you've caused upon people. Did you, whenever you guys finished the game, was it at the time when they'd released the epilogue, where you go back to the camp?
Yep.
I loved that.
Yeah, that was great. So we never had an ending without that. So yeah, that was a great little part. And you get to talk to everybody. And and the funny part about that is I think that, again, I don't credit this to us actually doing anything tactically good, but the only person we didn't see from the adventures was Shadowheart because she had left. So we never got anything.
Yeah,
with her
I keep
afterwards.
forgetting that Shadowheart absolutely left your guys' party. So
Yeah.
you didn't have her in Act 3 at all. Wow, you've got a whole world to explore.
I'll tell you what the most heartbreaking moment of the whole game though was. Did you go into the cave with the owlbear mother in the beginning?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't realize for quite a while until my co-host told me that the owlbear that's at your camp was the child of that owlbear.
How did you not realize that?
Because it was too heartbreaking to me. It was just too depressing for me. Because when we went in that owlbear, when I tell you that I have to look up before our next run if there is a way to save that creature. I was so angry.
There is.
I was there.
If you don't kill the owlbear mother, then the
never gonna
goblins will kill her.
I wish there was a way to stop
sad.
that. I had to stop playing. I'm like, we have to stop playing for half an hour. I really did not think in any. I was really, because we reloaded that a couple times till we passed the check where we were like, no, we're not threatening you, because I just wanted to get us back out of there. I didn't want to fight her, so I'm like, we have to get out. But once she engages with you, you have to either get out or you have to kill her. And I'm like, well, we're not killing this animal. So I'm like, we'll reload this until I pass this check, which I have no problem doing that. People are like, oh, let's save. Fuck it, I don't care.
Oh, bullshit.
Yeah.
I think also something you should do on your second run is get a speak with animals potion or spell and just use that every day because it's so useful.
No. I had that as a built-in power. I spoke with animals. Oh, no. That's one of that was a requirement of my, once I realized you could speak with animals. Oh, no. All the time. Every time we went back to camp, I played fetch with that dog. Every fucking time that dog and I played fetch. Always. And I would talk to that and the owlbear, and I'd always check in with them. The only thing I was kind of like, oh, they didn't really do more with that was the owlbear never really changes what it says. It's always saying the same stuff. And I'm like, oh, at some point I'd like this animal to kind of, play fetch or, say something different. Because the dog's like, hey, I found something. It's always trash, but whatever. The dog's heart's in the right place. I don't care.
Yeah,
and that was another thing.
Best.
That was another thing. I had read about the dog, and I knew there was a specific way to get the dog. And so Lando shows up, and he starts to go up. I'm like, stop. I'm like, there's a specific sequence of events to get this dog, and I'm not losing this dog. So back up. And he was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, just go stand the fuck over there. I'll handle it. And I did all the specific stuff, and I'm like, okay, the dog will show up later. I'm like, now we can do whatever we want, but don't fuck this up for me. I need this dog.
We need this dog. He plays fetch.
I was adamant that no matter, like I said, I wiped out 3 children without batting an eye. But I was not going to run this dog off and not have him back at the camp because I'm like, I can't handle this dog maybe being hurt. He and the owlbear
are best friends.
Oh, they're great. They're wonderful.
That scene where he's like, it's like my brother.
Oh, yeah. They were great. You come in there batting around like those guys. They're having a great time. They don't have to worry about the world ending, all this shit. To live as an animal who only cares to run around with his friend. What a beautiful life that would be. So...
I love it when they make the owlbear big and put armor on him.
Yeah, that was great. I wasn't expecting that. I thought he was just going to always be the little owlbear. So that was, I think there was another one. It took me a minute to go, oh, it's the same owlbear. Holy shit, he's big now. But we have now spoken about Baldur's Gate for like 40 minutes, which is fine. But at some point we do have to wind this up. So this is probably a good spot because we've talked about the joy of saving digital animals, and that's a great place to end. So
that's true. I mean, it's always the highlight of my gaming experience to meet a cute digital animal and see it become a cute, larger digital animal wearing armor.
Wearing armor with still having a little dog friend that runs around and just wants to chase a ball and bring you scraps of aluminum it finds on the side of the road because it thinks you might want it. I'm like, okay.
Listen, good point. Maybe I do. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe I do, and it's the thought that counts, so I will never turn down, It's fine. It's fine. So, is there anything else that I didn't promo for you outside of your work at The Information and your appearances on This Week in Google? Anything else you wanted to promote? Anything I forgot?
Think you got it. I mean, follow me on Twitter at Paris Martineau, on Blue Sky at paris.nyc. Thank you so much for having me. This was
thank you for doing this. I didn't think I was gonna. I didn't think the second half would be so much Baldur's Gate, but I really don't care because I do think it's a.
Listen, I've been waiting to talk to. I'm always waiting to talk to someone about Baldur's Gate, so never a problem.
And just for anybody who, because like I said, I am not a Dungeons and Dragons or Sword and Sorcery person, and yet I would say it probably was the best game. Was it last year? Did that game come out last year, or was it the year before?
It was last year, last summer.
Yeah, game with no bullshit DLC, no terrible ads, microtransactions, nothing. Just a purely beautifully written game where decisions actually matter, where multiple replays will probably give you wildly different stories. We're actually not going to play it again for a while so we forget some of it because I want to
That's really
not
smart.
remember. But also along that line, if you want something like that, I would recommend Wasteland 3 as well, which is, I think, on every platform at this point, so you can play it anywhere. It's just a post-apocalyptic version of that, but it's not as deep. I'm not going to pretend that it's as deeply written as Baldur's Gate. It doesn't have as much variety in the characters and branches, but it does have moral decisions. There are points where you don't know if you're making the right choice, and I think it actually does have a well-written and often very, very funny story. So I would say Wasteland 3 and Baldur's Gate 3, it's funny, 1, 3 led to another. I would say those are a great pair of games that if you like one, you'll probably like the other. So if you've never played either of them, play one of them, whichever one.
Oh man, I'll have to check it out. Wasteland 3.
Yeah, it's probably pretty cheap now too because it's been out for at least 3-4 years. So I think you could probably get it for less than $20. And it's as far as its class system, it's a lot lighter. You won't have to work as hard to figure out the mechanics. That's the nice part. That one is much more simple. It's like, okay, I want to shoot with a rifle. Good. Get your rifle skill up. You're done. Like there's no, that's what I mean. It's a little shallower, but its story is still well told. And it's an echo of Baldur's Gate 3. It may not be as rich as that is, but it's similar enough that, like I said, I went from that and I'm like, okay, I want to play something like that. And Baldur's Gate 3 was a deeper version of that. So that would be a very long-winded recommendation for it. But yeah, thank you, Paris. This was absolutely delightful. To
Likewise.
Talk,
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. And on that note, everybody else, go to parismartineau.com or theinformation.com or go watch This Week in Google. And if you want to listen to past episodes of our show, you can go over to ozonenightmare.com and there will be an archives button. And you can scroll through and listen to two idiots just babbling on about nothing. So there's a wonderful promo. Whatever you do, enjoy what you listen to. And that's it. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. Visit ozonenightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @Ozone Nightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. Music for Ozone Late Night is provided by Ogre. Visit ogresounds.bandcamp.com to hear and purchase his fantastic selection of music.